Welcome to another Inside Track edition of the Digital DJ Tips DJ School podcast. This is where we invite an audience of our students to join us to discuss three burning topics in our community of DJs from the last month. And this is what we have on the agenda this time. So firstly, we're going to talk about why DJs can no longer afford to ignore music streaming services in their DJing. It's a hot topic at the moment because Spotify went down for DJs. Obviously not for everyone else in the world, that would have stopped the world. But it went down for DJs for not just a few hours, but for 9 whole days in the last month. And there were plenty of DJs up in arms over it and plenty saying, well, you shouldn't be using these services at all. We're going to argue something a bit more nuanced. We're also going to talk about 5 mistakes that DJs returning to the game make over and over again based upon our students, our school. And these are interesting because a DJ returning to the game nowadays is returning to a very different musical, DJ gear, culture, in all kind of areas, a different scene to the one that they left back in the day when they maybe played vinyl records for a few parties for their friends when they were much younger. And so they have a specific set of needs and a specific set of traps that they fall into when they're trying to get back up to speed. We're going to talk about the 5 biggest mistakes that we see over and over again. And then we're going to get all geeky, as we like to sometimes, at the end, when we're going to talk about audio interfaces for DJs. Because if you want to record or live stream a DJ set, and a lot of DJs want to do the latter nowadays. It's a very big scene on Twitch and socials and so on. If you want to either record or live stream your DJ set, you're going to need an audio interface. And there's a lot of stuff out there that costs an awful lot of money. We're going to show you that actually for about $30 or pounds or euros, you can get the job done. But we're also going to talk about why some of the other bits of kit out there are probably worth your attention as well. As ever, this podcast is supported and funded by our wonderful students here at the Digital DJ Tips DJ School. So thank you to them. And if you do enjoy this and you're interested in learning from us, head over to digitaldjtips.com, click the big join button and become the latest free member of our community. Now, let's get started. Our first question is really in answer to something that's been happening in the DJ world recently, and it is all about live streaming. So several of our students have said, you know, why should or shouldn't I use a streaming service, a music subscription service in my DJing? And this debate came about really because Spotify went down for DJs for not just like an hour or two, but for 9 days, very recently. Now, you might say, if you're a seasoned DJ, if you've been doing this for years or even decades, who cares? And I totally get your point of view. But what you're missing is what's changed in DJing in the last few years. And possibly what you're underestimating is what's changed in the world of the way people consume music in the past few years. So let's start with that end point. You know, streaming services are the way people consume music. And I mean normal people, other people, not us lot, not us freaks, everyone else. They just are. Spotify and Apple Music being the very big two. And then behind that, there are other services as well. You might be a user of Tidal, or if you're a DJ, Beatport. You might be a user of Qobuz, or there's several others, of course there are. But the point is that they are the way everyone else consumes music, right? So what happened within the last couple of years is that Apple Music and Spotify, and some of this happened within the last few months, Apple Music and Spotify became available for DJs inside their hardware and inside their software. Not both of them on everything, but enough to completely upend that whole world. Because until then, DJs had really niche services, as I've mentioned already, Tidal, but also Beatport and BeatSource, which are now actually one. These are services that really, they don't really even cause a blip out there in the real world. But they are the ones that DJs had until now. And then Spotify and Apple Music turn up. Now, they're not utterly great for DJs. They're not optimized for DJs. They don't have the versions of songs DJs want. They don't have the features DJs want. But that is where the first point I made comes in. They've completely changed the world of DJing for everyone else. They've opened the doors to everyone else because now anyone can grab a phone app, subscribe for a few dollars a month and have access to all the world's music, and not only that, use really fantastic features to DJ with that music. Anyone. So if you've wondered why on social media, on Instagram and TikTok, your kids, if not you, are seeing all these mashups being made by DJs, I'm going to tell you now, they are not using music that they've bought. They're using music they're getting from these streaming services, and they are doing it because of these streaming services. They have opened the doors and made it possible, and in a lot of cases even made people realize that it is possible. So we need to understand as a DJ community and as a DJ world that this is a big deal. Streaming is a big deal in DJing. Maybe not for us, and we might not like it or agree with it, but that's not really the point that I'm making here. The point is we can't ignore it. It's happening, and our kids, even if not us, are not going to be collecting music the way we collected it, either physically, although of course there's always going to be room for it. Coffee table albums and stuff are having a moment at the moment. You know, there's more vinyl being bought than ever before, but it's still a tiny blip against the amount of music people are listening to, and they're doing that on streaming services, right? It's the cat's out the bag, like it or not. So the big streaming services are there, and the next argument we hear is, oh, well, you know, if the internet goes down, my streaming is going to go down. Of course it is. And that's absolutely valid. But again, your kids don't care. And people they're playing to probably don't care. If the internet goes down, then everyone will be at the ear of the venue owner, not the DJ. Ultimately, internet is becoming just like light or heat or power. It's just becoming something that we expect in civilized society. And if it's not there, it ain't going to be the DJ who gets the blame as the years go on from now. Just trust me on that. It just isn't. And all the technical problems will be solved. You know, they are being solved. There are DJ systems now that will download whole sets from the streaming services before you even start, to solve that problem for DJs who care about it, which isn't very many. So look, the whole point about me saying this is not saying whether I agree with it or not, because that doesn't really matter. What matters is we cannot ignore it as DJs. And even if a few of us do, the ones coming behind us in a massive wave are not ignoring it. So it's up to us. When should we be, even us purists, even us people who've been doing it half our lives, even us people who maybe still collect music and still value owning our music, where should we be using streaming services? So I think that there's really three places. Number one is just in our day-to-day lives for discovering music. You know, as DJs, we ought to be hearing more music than everyone else. It's kind of our calling card. It's kind of the thing that gives us the right to curate music for other people. It's a bit strange if you're a DJ who doesn't really have the musical knowledge of your audience because you haven't bothered to listen to it. So you've got to keep up with them, and unless you've got deep pockets, that's going to mean a streaming service. So look, for music discovery, I'm sure you'd agree with me with this, even if you really don't like the idea of doing it in your DJing, a streaming service is a great thing to have. And then DJing at home for fun. There's no reason why you shouldn't. If it's there, that streaming service is there, there's no reason why you shouldn't just use it. I mean, it's crazy not to, right? The songs are there. Your DJ software will play them. You drag them onto the decks and hit play, and that's it. So nowadays, with the big streaming services, the same ones that you probably subscribe to just for day-to-day use in your family, with them available right there in your DJ gear, why wouldn't you? I mean, it's crazy. It's like laying out a buffet and saying you're not allowed to eat. It's just madness. For discovering music, they're absolutely brilliant. For listening to new genres and new labels and new styles, for catching up with stuff, for keeping up to speed with what people are into. You know, the idea that you have to go and buy all that music just to do that is crazy. Now, you can DJ for yourself at home on a streaming service until the cows come home, and it doesn't matter if that music goes off. But also, frankly, it doesn't matter if that music goes off when you're playing at a house party for your friends, when you're playing for your family, when you're playing in public places where no one really cares. And that is an awful lot of DJing nowadays. It really is. So look, for all these reasons and in all these places, it's fine to use streaming services. It really, really is. When should you not use them? Well, I'm sure we can all agree on this. Pros shouldn't be using streaming services as their main source of music, not because there's anything, you know, putting aside any moral issues with it. And by the way, if we're going to talk about moral issues, we don't get to make the rules here. You know, we didn't decide whether we wanted Spotify or not. And ultimately, if you really care, then stream using Spotify and go and buy from Bandcamp, which is a fantastic way of giving a lot of money to the people who make the music. And I'll get back to that in a minute. But anyway, look, we shouldn't be using it in our pro DJ sets, mainly because it is unreliable. And ultimately, yes, in the future, it will probably be you know, it would be like, oh, there's been an internet cut. Everything goes down. No one can stream, no one can make content, and there's no music. You know, it will kind of like all be lumped together by our kids. Right now, I completely agree if you're saying, well, come on, Phil, we're going to get blamed for this. So you shouldn't be using it for your professional events where you ultimately are in charge of keeping the music going. And I will never disagree with you on that one. Now, also, if you're an advanced DJ, if you like to do more than just play songs, then it's no good because it doesn't let you do a lot of that stuff. It doesn't let you do a lot of the preparation ahead of time. It doesn't let you do a lot of the stems on a lot of services. Obviously, you can't just take songs from streaming services and make your own remixes and re-edits and prepare versions to use in your DJ sets. Of course, when we're getting to the point of being advanced professional DJs, we want to own our music. And again, I'm never going to argue with that. What I would say is, it's absolutely two things really. Number one, it's absolutely fine to stream the music you like, with the caveats I just said. And I'd say as long as you go and buy the music you love, assemble a collection of the music you love that you own. But secondly, it's not an either or. You don't have to put a flag in one or the other and say, I'm never going to buy music, I'm only going to stream, I'm modern. Or I'm never going to stream music, I'm only going to buy music because that's the only way. It doesn't make sense. Neither of those arguments, like so much of fundamental taking sides, don't make sense. The nuance, the truth is somewhere in the middle. It's not an either or. And so my argument would be, for all the reasons above, DJs should not ignore streaming services. And again, what brought this into focus was the massive outcry when a streaming service that until like literally a year ago, it wasn't even associated with DJing at all because it had had a dabble with it in years gone by and disappeared, and that was the end of it. A streaming service that isn't necessarily associated with DJs went down. Spotify went down in the DJ world, and the outcry was incredible because suddenly you realize that a lot of people are quietly relying on it. And that's when we realized that it's no longer possible to ignore this stuff, like it or hate it. So lots of comments coming in live from students, exactly as I would expect on this topic, and it's always good to hear it. Paul, I still like to own the music. So do I, Paul. On my phone, my music app is my music, and tucked away in a menu in the background is the streaming service. I'm proud of the music I own. That's the one I go to first. I totally get what you're saying there, Paul. So DJ Parallax is countering Michael, who says, maybe I'm just old. And he says, no, you're not old. You're just curious. You're just cautious. And there's nothing wrong with that. No one should rely on any one main source of music. And in fact, you hit on something a little bit more broad there, don't you, DJ Parallax? Professionals shouldn't rely on any one source of anything. So professional DJs have backup equipment. And of course, they should have backup music. And I think that's the bigger thing here. Benedict says, I use streaming for music discovery, and then I buy that music for using it in my own sets. DJ Parallax continues, I agree with that, music discovery, also for research and development, but I do prefer direct downloads, but it's not an either or. And I agree again. So Mateus says, I wonder where the music business is heading. So Juno Download just closed. That's just this week as we record this. It's one of the OG music download services. And you're right, it did. Amazon's MP3 presence technically gets worse. I feel like the market for digital music sales slowly narrows down as DJs are the only ones who still buy music. Collectors won't buy digital music. So that's a really interesting point. Collectors want the physical music, right? They buy Record Collector magazine and buy box sets and buy coffee table CD sets and stuff. Yeah, I get that. And at the same time, casual users don't want to download anything. So where does that leave people who want to download MP3s? I would say Bandcamp is probably the way forward there. Bandcamp and Beatport, if you want to go down the specialist route, and the iTunes store is still alive and kicking for mainstream music. But I totally hear where you're coming from there, and it's an interesting one. As the middle kind of the center won't hold. You've got the collectors on one side who want physical, and you've got streamers on the other. But what happens to the ultimately very tiny number of people, which is what us DJs are, of course, in the market, who do want to download individual files or whole albums as digital files? It's true. The biggest problem, says Express VHab, for me with streaming services is that it's a rabbit hole. Oh, well, yes, it is a rabbit hole, but what a wonderful rabbit hole to get lost in as well. How can a Wi-Fi based system, says Dominic, work properly in a place with Wi-Fi interference like a wedding? It would be dangerous to rely on such a system. Well, I'm not here to say that Wi-Fi is the best way of doing this, but The best DJ booths have Ethernet in. You know, their gear is wired to the internet. So that's one excuse that doesn't really work when you get up to the professional level. EJ Weston, today's environment for DJs is actually remarkable with all the music sources and the technologies available. It makes it creatively infinite. What I wouldn't give to have had those at my fingertips 40 years ago when I started and when I was full of creative energy for performances. Yeah, exactly. You know, my kids don't worry about the internet going down or this kind of imperative to go and download every song that they're messing with in their TikTok, video editing platforms and so on. Time is marching on and things do change. Hello, Annika. Lovely to see you. One of our OG students, I've used OG twice today, who says, I own plenty of my own music. It's about time I started using it. I'm hiding my talents from the world. Well, I think it probably is because we've had you as a student for a long time. Annika, get yourself out there. The next topic is 5 mistakes that returning DJs always make. Now, let me give you some backstory here. We wrote an article about this and then made a video about it and then asked our audience about it. And we found out quite quickly that the mistakes people make over and over again are the same ones that we already kind of knew as a DJ school. Now, I need to be clear about who we're talking about here. We're not talking about beginner DJs here. We're talking about returning DJs or DJs who are taking up the hobby, having wanted to for a long, long time. And they're slightly different from beginners. And there's a lot of these kind of DJs out there. So this is DJs who have always wanted to do it. They maybe threw a party or two back in the day with their vinyl, which they definitely owned. And you know, we always say when DJing gets in you, it never leaves you, right? So these are DJs who've always wanted to do it again, and they've decided that now's the time. And there's another little section of DJs that we're also talking to here who have held on to the old ways and then in the end thought, oh, no, enough. I've got to move with the times. I've got to buy a digital DJ setup, right? So these are who we're talking to. And these are the mistakes that they make over and over again. So I want to just touch on them all here. I'm not going to go into too much detail. You can find the full video on our YouTube channel. And also there's an article on the digitaldjtips.com website where we covered this. But I do want to chat with you about this because I want to ask you here as we record this podcast, whether you have got something you want to add to this list. And should you pipe up with some different ones, I will share them before we move on to our next topic of the day. So here are the 5 then. Number 1 is obsessing over the gear. Now, there is a difference between being a hobby amateur weekend warrior DJ who just loves DJ gear. That's fine. There's a difference between that person and the person returning to DJing who isn't sure what they need, suddenly realizes that there's an infinite amount of gear out there and never moves past that point because they're obsessed. They don't have the ability to move past fretting about the gear, worrying about what to buy, worrying about whether they're closing a door by opening another one, and so on. Here's the truth. The most basic DJ gear that you can buy nowadays does 100 times more than the DJ gear that you have used in the past if you go back a generation. It's like your smartphone does 100 times more than the computer in the Apollo missions that put the first man on the moon. And therefore, if all you want to do is land on the moon again, you don't need to worry because anything will do it, right? So if you're obsessing over the gear, really you just need to buy something and get over yourself. And we always give the single most obvious, most, what's the word I'm looking for? It's the most reductive piece of advice going. Go and buy a DDJ Flex 4. Write it down if you're listening to this thinking, all right, I'm going to take you as a read. DDJ FLX 4. And I'll tell you why. It'll cost you $200 or $300. It will work with all the DJ software out there, or at least most of it. And it will be worth almost what you paid for it if you decide this just isn't for you, you're going to sell it again. That piece of equipment has got everything you need on it. And if it is a mistake, it won't cost you very much. And trust me, you can DJ professionally on it. One of our tutors, James Hype, did a video recently where he got one of those and he got a full pro setup and he played it to a sound engineer and said, which one of these is the cheap one and which is the expensive one? In a DJ booth, the sound engineer couldn't tell the difference. If a sound engineer can't tell the difference, you won't. So Something like that will give you everything you remember and loads more. So there's nothing for you to worry about. Just go and buy one of those. The reason you shouldn't buy an all singing, all dancing DJ setup is I've already given you one of them. It might not be for you, so why waste your money? But two, when you move up from spending hundreds to spending thousands, which is the next step up, is the next meaningful step up, at the point that you're starting to do this, you don't know what direction to take. You don't know. So imagine you're getting into photography, right? And you do the wise thing and say, look, I'm going to set my phone to manual, and I'm going to use the aperture and the shutter speed and the ISO and everything on my phone. And then I'm going to get into photography. I'm going to figure it out. And then I'm going to buy a camera, right? In doing that phone photography, you will work out the kind of camera you want, whether you want a DSLR, whether you want full frame, whether you want, there's all kinds of micro four thirds, there's all kinds of formats, there's all kinds of lenses, there's all kinds of ways you can go with cameras. You'd be a bit silly to go and buy one of those cameras first because you just wouldn't know, right? It's the same with DJ gear. When you get up to the thousands, there's some really good systems that you can buy, but they are different from each other, and you can make meaningful errors if you're not sure what you're doing. So don't do it, right? Buy something that is pretty universal and that won't waste your money. Don't obsess over the gear. So the second thing, and this is tied to it, is that beginner or returning DJs who are basically beginners with modern kit as opposed to all-out beginners get overwhelmed by the features. Even on that cheapest gear, even on that most basic gear, as I said, you can do 100 times more than you could on a pair of turntables and a mixer. And it's overwhelmed. It's like, oh no, in order to DJ nowadays, I need to figure all this stuff out. I need to figure out the hot cues and the loops and the slicer and the sampler and the key shifting. And I need to know exactly how to use these stems functions. And I need to know how to save all the information into the software so that I can assemble my sets the way that I see DJs doing that stuff. And on and on and on it goes. And you don't. You really don't. What you need to do is get back to what you could do before. Now, if you can get music onto each deck, if you can start that music when you want it to start, and you can blend between it, then you are doing what you can do on a pair of turntables and a mixer, and congratulations, you are DJing again. And let me let you into a little secret. There's still an awful lot of DJs out there today who do nothing more than that. I know DJs, good DJs, who use digital gear. They won't even use the cue buttons, which are just the little buttons that you can set and say, when I press this button, I want the track to start at this particular point, right? That's all it is. They won't even use that because you don't get those on records. So they literally grab the platter on a DJ controller and use that to start tracks playing. It's absolutely fine. You shouldn't feel like you have to use the other features. They are there to help you. They're there to make your life more fun, but they're not essential. So we know that we don't have to use the features until we're ready, and we know that we shouldn't be obsessing over the gear. The next one is returning DJs drown in the music and the music library. They are used to buying 1 or 2 records a week and adding them to a collection, and they don't understand the way music works nowadays. They don't understand. We've already touched on it today talking about streaming services. They don't understand how they plug into the workflow. They don't know where to go and buy the music from. Once they've got the music, they're not sure where it is on their computer. Once they've figured that out, and that's more an operating system thing than a DJ thing, once they've figured that out, they don't really understand what happens when they put it in their DJ software or onto their USB drive. Once they've figured that out, they don't know how to arrange it. They don't know whether they should be filtering or sorting or making playlists or what playlists really are. And I could go on and on and on. Ultimately, music can be confusing unless you get these things nailed. And the best advice here is, yes, figure out the basics. Figure out where the music actually is on your computer. It's just like knowing where your word processor documents are or your photos, right? It's a basic. But then you only need to get enough music to play that first DJ set with your new gear that you've finally got over the paralysis and bought. You only need to get enough music to play that first DJ set. So let's say you're going to say, right, I'm getting back into this. In a month, I'm going to do an hour. I'm going to play for an hour and I'm going to do it in front of someone else. That's 20, 25 songs, right? So you need 50. 50 songs will give you enough to be able to take turns and twists, and because ultimately you're only going to play half of them, right? So you've got enough so that you're not just playing a playlist, you know, one after another, no thought. You've got enough so that you can interact with the music and follow your heart, follow the crowd or whatever. But not so much that it's been really hard to collect, or that you're just staring at that screen saying, oh no, 2,000 songs, what do I play next? So just double the music you need. And again, 50 tracks. So let's say you set yourself a really bold target. I'm going to play a DJ set on my new gear in front of someone in a month. It's 2 tracks a day. That's all you've got to find. And I'm sure you can do that, right? So you shouldn't drown in the music. All right, so let's carry on. The next one, this is the imposter syndrome one. Feeling out of date. And this happens when you're older. You're back to DJing. Now, you feel like you're no longer up with what you need to be up with to even do this. And this is much, much more common than you might think. So here's what I've got to say to that. One, if you want to do this again, it's never left you. Therefore, you've actually been a DJ for 20, 30, 40 years. Because you've been following the scene, it's in your head, you're listening to mixes, you're probably playing songs in your head and blending them yourself, you know, without going anywhere near the gear, because that's what we do, right? You're singing one thing over another on the radio. You are a music freak. You own that. You've got a right to be a DJ, right? There's no imposter syndrome here. Your wisdom, your knowledge is such that someone starting out now might be half your age, but they've got a tenth of what you've got up here. Ultimately, if you want to do this, that is your pass, that is your permission. You don't need to feel out of date, because guess what? There's plenty of people still alive and well who love what you love, who think what you're into is cool. But more than that, I've been around enough to see music come around again and again and again. And ultimately, people are drawing on the times when you and I were young more than ever. You must have noticed the nostalgia. You must have noticed the 90s are a big, big, big decade out there at the moment. You've got that. You don't need to go and discover that. You don't need to reinvent that. You've got it. So do not feel out of date. Online, in the DJing community out there now, there is so many places, so many ways that you can share your music and hook into a community of people who are into what you're into. But also offline. I was recording some DJ training in the States recently, right? I was in a small town in New Jersey, and I stayed in a hotel, lovely little hotel, small town. I went down to the bar on the Friday night. There's a guy there playing music. He's probably in his 40s. He's watching some kind of sport on his phone, right? So he's got his phone propped up where none of the crowd can see, and he's got half an eye on the game. While he's DJing, he's playing proper New York 90s house, Todd Terry style stuff. And he's got a dance floor, he's got a busy bar, and he's got a dance floor with 10 people on it who are all his age. I was just getting the divorcees, the friends on a night out who've not seen each other for a while kind of vibe from his dance floor. And it was brilliant. Now, I walked into a random bar in a random town in a random part of a country, and that's what I saw going on. And I'm not telling you that you can start such a scene in your town. All I'm telling you is people want to dance to the music they know, and those people are not dead yet. So don't think just because you're not 21 with a TikTok account that you cannot be a DJ. Which brings me on to my final point, the final mistake that returning DJs make, which is not realizing how much DJing has exploded in the meantime. Because back in the day, the number of DJs was tiny. The number of places DJs could play was tiny. You basically played in the club, or if you lived in a big city, they might have some trendy bars where you could play as well. That's all gone. And the funny thing is, a lot of those venues have gone as well, because DJing has atomized and it's now literally everywhere. The equipment is so small, the chances to play, I'm sure you've seen it from everywhere. You know, you see DJs in record shop windows, in clothes shops, you see DJs at sports events, you see DJs playing in every size of bar, every size of lounge, every size of pub. And of course the clubs are still there. You go online, you go on Twitch, it's absolutely popping with DJs. You see DJs sharing their stuff on Instagram and TikTok. You see DJs who have playing Second Life. You see DJs using Tribe XR to play literally virtual reality stuff. And now DJs are even popping up in places like Roblox. Ultimately, DJing will always find a place, and online will simply magnify that. So the DJ world has totally exploded. And of course, you can do it for fun. You can do it for yourself. You always could. You don't have to play in front of other people. You know, we get people saying, I want to just DJ for fun. Am I mad to want to buy a DJ controller? And we're like, duh. Why would that be mad? What is it about DJing that means that that's mad? But yet buying a set of golf clubs and going and playing golf on a Sunday, which would probably cost you 10 times the amount of a DJ controller, but you've got no intention of ever doing it competitively, right? You're just doing it for fun. Why is that all right? But yet it's not okay to buy a DJ controller and DJ for fun. So look, these are the mistakes. So hopefully if you are a casual DJ, or you're thinking of returning to DJing, or you have returned to DJing and you've got a little bit of a wobble, I've kind of helped you to understand that it's all okay. There are ways past this stuff. Ultimately, it's about passion for music. It really is. And that's the thing that I think has to shine through. So lots of comments on this one as well. Lots of agreement on my choice of just a really simple Flex 10. I mean, look, it's the most popular DJ controller. I'm not saying you have to go. It's a Pioneer DJ Alpha Theta controller. You don't have to go down that route. Ultimately, buy something cheap. That's the one we always recommend because it's ubiquitous. Dominic, I'm a photographer. What can I say about an expensive camera? It won't necessarily help you take better photos. However, it will be more user-friendly once you've mastered the technical aspects. And it's the same with DJ gear, right? They don't put these features on there to make the stuff harder to use. They are there to make your life easier once you've mastered them, but you don't have to do it all in one go. And you don't need to buy the most expensive gear because even the cheap stuff has got so much of this stuff on it. Joshua says you don't need to know everything. I use all my features. I use my AZ all the time, which if you're a casual listener or viewer of this podcast, and AZ's got everything on it. I use it all the time, but I don't use anywhere near all the features. The Ruckus says, I'm a gearhead. I love DJ gear, but guess what? The tiny little Flex 4 is my all-time favorite. So there you go. Everything costs so much money. A few of you are pointing the fact that stuff is expensive. Just use what works for you. Don't buy expensive unless you know you're going to have a definite return on investment. Yes, even if you want to buy expensive, there's probably someone else in your household who would rather you didn't. And DJ Parallax says, I appreciate your insight. We've got a couple of people in New Jersey as well, including DJ Parallax, who says, born and bred, and Todd Terry is a beast, in my opinion. Our third topic for today is a technical one, but I'm going to make it fun because I can make any technical topic fun. It's my superpower. We're going to talk about audio interfaces. Now, on the face of it, it doesn't sound that enticing, does it? But here's the thing. Any DJ nowadays is going to have a couple of things knocking around in their bag, in their crate that they take with them that they just find insanely useful. One of them is a tiny little mixer, right? Where you can plug in things. And things are a good thing to be able to plug in, because if you need a microphone or someone else needs to plug in something and no one else can do it, your little mixer thing can do it, right? So DJs have mixers, they just do. They're only tiny, they're tucked in the bottom of the bag. We carry them around with us. But another thing that increasingly DJs carry around with them is an audio interface. So why? Why do you need an audio interface? Well, they're used to record and live stream music. And the reason we need them is that music is not digital, music is analog. Obviously, if we're listening to music, it's analog. You don't plug a computer into speakers, you plug a computer into something that converts that music from digital to analog, and then an amplifier makes it louder, and then the speakers play it. So the other way round is how you record it nowadays. You don't put a cassette tape into a tape machine and click record, feeding normal audio into it. Of course you don't. You click record on a recording program in a computer or on a recording app in a phone, and they are digital. And therefore you need to get an analog signal from your DJ gear to a digital device, and therefore you need an audio interface. So if you want to live stream, if you want to record your set, somewhere in that path is an audio interface. It's a non-negotiable. So if you need an audio interface, where is it? What is it? Where do you get one? How much should you pay for it? Well, look, here's the funny thing. If you're DJing on a laptop, and if you want to record your DJ set on the same laptop you're DJing on, then it's already got one built in, because it's built into the actual DJ gear itself. All DJ gear that works with computers has to have this piece of tech built into it. Otherwise, the DJ software, which is digital, can't talk to the DJ gear's analog outputs. You just need to harness it. So you can get little apps that will let you say, give me that audio, give me the audio from that DJ controller and let me record it. Job done. Which is actually better than just hitting record in the DJ software, by the way, because that won't let you record streaming services, as we talked about earlier. That's another disadvantage of them due to licensing and all that stuff. Right, so the point is, if you are recording your DJ set or live streaming your DJ set and you happen to be a laptop DJ and you happen to be using the same laptop to do those things, then you can do it without buying one. Otherwise, you do need one. You need to go and buy something to do this. So sometimes they're built into DJ mixers as well, which is great. But assuming they're not, assuming you're having to plug into something, a spare output that could otherwise be plugged into speakers, right? You need one of these. So if you need one, where do you get one? What do you pay? There's lots of them out there. You can get audio interfaces for podcasters that have got lots of microphone inputs. You can get ones for studios that have got lots of inputs that let you plug in synthesizers and have fold back so people can hear themselves singing from their mics on their headphones and all this stuff. You know, do you need one of those? Well, they'll do the job, because as long as they can get your DJ gear's output into the computer or the phone, that's all you need. They'll do the job. But are they overkill? They most certainly are. So you can get that kind of thing. You can also get DJ friendly equipment that's literally marketed at us. You know, are they good? Should you go for one of those? They're certainly more expensive than some options. Or should you just get something really generic? Well, let's talk about that now. Let's talk about the 4 ways of doing it. And let's start with that first one, generic. For about £30, €, you can buy a really basic DJ compatible audio interface. It's just a little piece of plastic with 2 inputs for your audio, like the red and the black RCA sockets, and it's got a USB socket on it. And that's it. It gets its power from the USB, whatever you plug it into, that's it. Literally $30. I'm thinking Behringer do one, it's called the UA202. The Behringer UA202, they haven't changed it in years. That will do the job, and get the right adapter lead, that will also go into your phone and you can hit record on a phone app, you know, and that's it. That's it. Done. $30. And that lots of people have got them, lots of people use them, lots of people will find the right adapters or leads to plug them into pretty much anything. And as long as you know that that's the technology you need and that will do the job, you can be confident that a generic interface like that will do the job. There's no reason necessarily to buy anything more, to spend any more. But there are times when spending more might be useful to you because you get more convenience or you get more features. So assuming that you don't want just a generic interface, which again, I think would probably be the place to start, we're going to talk about 2 DJ focused solutions. The first one is an audio interface, like I've just described, but one that's aimed at DJs, that's got features that mean it's easier, quicker, more reliable for DJs to use them. I'm thinking specifically of one that's now on its 5th incarnation called the EverMix. So the EverMix Box 5 has got a couple of features that are nice on it. It's got a limiter, which basically means that even if you're a bit naughty by driving it a bit hard, putting your levels in the red, it'll probably be all right. But also it's got a very nice app, which you have to subscribe to. But that app will let you, like, one-click stream your mix to Mixcloud or SoundCloud, and lots of other features in the app as well that just mean that you're more likely to use it. So if you are really leaning in heavily to recording or live streaming your sets and you know you're going to use something like that, you might just find that the quicker, and that it comes with all the right leads, right? So you're not messing around with adapters and stuff. You might find something like that works for you because the initial outlay and the subscription for an app that's all DJ focused means that you actually use it, right? No point having something that costs you $30 that you never use. Why not pay $150 and have something that you use every week? So that's the biggest argument, that the people who make that have made it really easy, and it is a great little device. But ultimately, it's the same technology, it's the same hardware underneath the cover as the cheaper devices. But the other DJ focused one is the DJ recorder devices. So these are the ones that literally can record onto an SD card on the unit itself. There's a couple of them out there. There's one I haven't heard much of recently by a company called Reloop, called the Tape 2. It looks like a cassette tape. But the one that we've heard a lot of recently and that I do rate very highly is called the Howler 2 they've just released. Now this little box has got a 1-click record on it. So you literally just go record my set. There you go. It's recording it. But also it's got an output that goes to your computer, so you can live stream your DJ set, or indeed, if you want to, record your DJ set on your computer at the same time as recording in the unit itself. And that alone makes this really good. But the next thing it has, which corrects a real problem that a lot of DJs have when they're trying to do this, is that it can feed what you plug into it back out again as if you haven't plugged it in. So let's imagine a situation where you've got a DJ mixer or you've got a DJ controller. We've already talked about one that's just like this, the Flex 4, where you've only got one output. That's it. So you plug your speakers in. Where are you meant to plug one of these audio interfaces in? Well, we've already talked about one solution. Remember I said that DJs often carry around a tiny little mixer. Here's another reason why DJs do that kind of stuff, because you plug your one output into the mixer and you use two outputs from the mixer to do the separate things. But the Howler box lets you plug your speakers into it, and it just acts as a through. So it effectively converts your one output from your DJ gear into two. So you can feed your speakers, you can record on the unit, and you can feed your live streaming laptop or phone all at the same time, which is pretty useful. So that's why that kind of solution is loved by a certain subset of DJs. And the final device, the final genre of device, is what I would call field recorders or posh dictaphones, right? They're the ones with a couple of microphones on the top. I'm sure you've seen them. Tascam, who else makes them? Zoom make them. These are great if you spend more than the basic models, because if you spend more than the basic model, you can record on them in the same way we just spoke about, and you can at the same time use them as an audio interface to go to your computer to live stream, right? So it does what the Howler box does. But one of the features that these little devices have that no other device has is that they record your audio in a more sophisticated way on board. They use something called 32-bit float. Now, essentially, that stops you distorting them. That stops you overdriving them. It stops you accidentally wrecking your recording by playing too loud into the unit. Because even if the recording's really loud, you get it into some editing software, you pull the levels down, and nothing's been lost and nothing's been distorted digitally, which is a really, really good thing to have. If you've ever lost a great DJ set, then these units are more sophisticated in the way they can record it than anything we've talked about, including the DJ units. So that is a good reason. I would say you would only go for one of these if you know that you're terrible, you can't keep your levels in check. But more importantly, if you know you're going to use it for something else as well. A lot of producers really love having a decent field recorder because you literally use it when you're out and about to record textures and sounds and things you can use in your productions. So if you have a need to buy one of these anyway, then you're getting those extra things on top. So look, the reason for this section was to show you that there is nothing under the cover here that necessarily means you've got to spend a lot of money on it. $30 will get you something that will do the job perfectly, and your computer or phone doesn't know the difference, and your audience won't know the difference when they hear the recording. It's about the extra features, and it's about going in with your eyes wide open and deciding whether those features are important to you. So lots of you in the chat, lots of our students have got the original Howler box and spotted the Mark II and are looking forward to it. So I think they're going to shift a few. I think it's on early order at the moment, that unit. They are coming out very soon. Apparently there's a few issues with well, there always are, aren't there, with shipping, but they are close to shipping at the moment. A few of you have bought these units but not used them. You know, this is what the Evermix box is good at. It's designed to just be really easy to use, because there's no point having it if you don't use it. A few of you are asking whether these devices are compatible with insert something here, Windows, iOS, Android, etc. So here's the thing, let's just cover this before we close. These devices are nowadays all what's called class compliant, and a class compliant device does not need drivers. So you remember in the past, and it still happens with DJ gear, when you plug something in, it says you need to install drivers in order to use this, right? Now that's okay on a Mac or a Windows computer. It's not so good if you're trying to use it on iOS or a phone, because you can't install drivers on phones. So for the last half decade at least, most of this stuff ships class compliant. And that just means you can plug it into anything and it'll just work, right? So the answer to the question, is it compatible with, is check before you buy something that it is what's called class compliant. Most stuff is, it'll be in the small print. And if it is, you can be pretty sure it's going to work with everything if you can get the right lead for it. Okay, we're going to leave it there for today. I really, as ever, enjoyed today's discussion. It's lovely to have the input of our wonderful students as well. And I hope wherever you're watching or listening to this, you've enjoyed it too. Again, if you'd like to get closer to the school, if you'd like to get information about our podcasts and our videos and our lessons and everything else we do, head over to the digitaldjtips.com website and stick your name into that email sign up form. It's free and we'll give you a copy of our book, Rock the Dance Floor, which is the best-selling book on how to DJ on Amazon, for free as a thank you for becoming our latest subscriber. Meanwhile, from me, Phil Morse, here in the Digital DJ Tips studio, get good, get out there, make the moments, and I'll see you again very soon. Bye-bye for now.